Hello everyone, this is Shelley. Thank you so much for clicking on this channel. It tells me that you want to learn how to crochet. I love to crochet. I love to knit, I love to crochet, but in this particular tutorial, I'm going to teach you the basics of crochet. Lesson 1, we are going to start with our foundation row and single crochet. So what you're going to need for this project is 4-weight yarn, and you're going to need a crochet hook. Crochet hook that is you can choose, I would suggest you choose a 5mm, a 5.5mm, or a 6mm. Those are all good sizes of crochet hooks to learn how to crochet on. My hook of choice would be the 5.5mm, but you choose one of those three, and let's get started. All right, now that we have our supplies, let's begin. We're going to leave I don't know, about a 6-inch tail or so. We're going to take that yarn, we're going to wrap it around our finger, go all the way around, and then cross it over at the top. Okay, when you cross it over at the top, you're going to take your hook, you're going to put it underneath the bottom one, and you're going to grab that yarn that's at the top. You're going to turn your hook so it catches that yarn, and you're going to pull it through that bottom loop, and you've got your starting chain on your hook. Okay, from there, we're going to do our foundation chain. So in order to do the foundation chain, we want to chain up. We're going to do just a swatch of 15, okay? Now, how I hold my yarn is I put it in between my middle finger and my fourth finger, just like that. Then I bring it around over the top of my index finger, circle it around, and come in between like that. That's how it looks, okay? And so then what I do is I grab the knot on my hook, underneath the hook, with my thumb and my third finger. And this becomes my working yarn, okay? So let me show you that again. Go in between those two fingers, come around, and just turn your hand, grab your knot with the third finger and your thumb, and then we're going to begin to do our foundation chain. Now I want to have this a little bit tighter here. So this is our working yarn right here, this part right here, and I'm going to go underneath that with my hook. I'm going to pick it up with my hook, turn my hook so that the point of that hook is facing down, and I'm going to bring it through that loop that's on my hook, okay? That's the first chain in our foundation row, okay? Now we're going to do that again. We're going to go underneath, turn our hook so that the point goes down, bring that yarn through the loop on your hook. After every 2 stitches or so, you want to move your thumb and your finger up so it's close to the hook, holding on that last stitch that you just did. Okay, then I'm going to go again, turn my hook, go through that chain. We are creating our foundation row of chains right now. Okay, this will be 4, this will be 5. Move my thumbs up and my finger up, go underneath, turn it, 6. You want to always bring your loop that's on your hook over this wide part of your hook. If you look at my hook, you'll see that it's narrow at the front. For a this is a 5.5mm hook, which means this part right here is the width that I'm looking to get a 5.5mm loop. Okay, so I am going to go around again, come through, make sure that that loop goes over, because that's how I get the same size stitches throughout my whole project, is to make, and you know what, I'll tell you, it'll automatically go there because you're pushing up and down like this to get your yarn through, and so it automatically does. But some people, when they start, are really tight crocheters, and they'll go like this, and they'll come through and they'll struggle to get that through, and then they'll leave it there, and then they'll go again just like that, and then you're gonna have really tight stitches and uneven row. And so in the very beginning, make a habit of making sure that you're going up far enough to grab that yarn to bring through, and then push it back, okay? And that will automatically happen. You'll automatically do that as you start crocheting and getting a feel for it. You're gonna push your hook up to grab that working yarn just like that. Okay, now let me see how many chains do I have on this already. I'll count them with you. Let me put it down here. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We do not count the loop that's on the hook. That is not a chain. So we have 13. We're going to do 2 more, 14 and 15. Now we've got 15 chains on our foundation row, all looking the same tension, and that takes some practice to get. So you want to work on your foundation row before you move on to the next step, and make sure you can get an even row of chains and your tension is great. Okay, so now what I'm going to tell you is that whenever we're going to start with our single crochet here. Whenever we do a single crochet, we always have to have a chain 1 before we turn and go down the other side of the row. So this stitch right here is going to be considered our chain 1, which is why we're going to go into the second chain from the hook. Never count this one. So this is our first chain, which is going to act like our chain 1. We will chain 1 when we get to the other side, but for the first row, this will act as our chain 1. This is our second chain from the hook. So first chain from the hook, second chain from the hook. We are going to go into the second chain from the hook. Okay, so you're going to go into that loop, yarn over. It's called yarn over when you're picking up the yarn that's in your working, this is our working yarn right here. Yarn over, pull it through that stitch. Now you've got 2 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through both loops. That's 1 single crochet. Then you're going to look down your row and you're going to see this next chain here. You're going to put your hook into that chain. You're going to yarn over, turn your hook so that it points down so that it hangs onto that yarn for you. Pull it through that stitch. Move your third finger and your thumb up to grab the top of those stitches. Yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. That's your second single crochet. Now you're going to go into the next one, and I do 3 before I mark my my first one, and let's finish this and then I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to yarn over, bring it through that chain, pull it over my hook so that both of those loops are over this wide part of the hook, so I'm having an even stitch. I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to pull through both loops on that hook. Now I'm going to just hook that up so I can just show you here. So now we've done 3 single crochets. This is our third single crochet, that was our second, and this is our first. You want to take a stitch marker and you want to put it under that V, which is two different, you've got your 2 bars there. That's your first stitch. You want to put your stitch marker underneath both of those bars, because when we come back, we have to make sure we end in that stitch. And if you don't mark it, you're gonna probably end up stopping on this one, and then it throws off your row count. Okay, until you are very comfortable in your crochet and you know where those stitches are, it's very important to use a stitch marker. And you know what? Even if you've crocheted for years, a stitch marker just makes your life easier. So make it a habit of doing so. Oops, I knocked the camera there, sorry. I use bobby pins because I just find they're easy to put in, easy to put out, and they don't fall off. Okay, they just stay there, and that's my favorite stitch marker of choice. So you can pick up a pile of those anywhere for next to nothing. So go to the dollar store and get yourself some stitch markers. Okay, so we're going to continue on down the row, going underneath that chain, drawing up a loop, going over the wide part of our hook, yarning over and going through both loops. That's a single crochet. Now because we missed that first chain when we started, that counted as our chain 1. We're going to have 14 single crochets in our row. Our foundation chain was 15, you'll remember, but we're only doing 14 single crochets. So whenever we do a row, we want to make sure that we always end up with 14 stitches. In this particular swatch, some patterns that you do, there's increases and decreases, etc. But I'm just showing you the basics now. So for every row that we do together on this project, we're going to end up with 14 stitches. Okay, so we're going to continue on here. Going underneath, going into that stitch, yarning over, coming through, yarning over, going through both loops on your hook. Okay, let's do it again. And we're at the end. Okay, so now I just pull on this knot just to tighten this up a little bit so the row looks like it's more even there. And there we go. We've got our first row of single crochets, and if you count the V's at the top, you'll have 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Okay, so now when you're doing a single crochet row, you need to chain one because your side stitches have to measure the height of your chain or of your stitch before you can turn, and that keeps your project even along the sides. Okay, so for a single crochet we chain one, then we turn our work like we're turning a page in a book. Okay, now if you pinch the very side of it and then this part of the work and open that up, you'll see a little square there, and that is your first stitch. If you turn it over here, you'll see your V there. Don't be misled by this one up here. That's your chain. This is your first stitch. So you're going to insert your hook into that center. It goes underneath those two bars of the V. You're going to yarn over, pull it through that space, yarn over, and pull through both stitches, both loops on your hook. That's your first single crochet. Then we're going to go into this next one. Yarn over, pull through, make sure both loops go to the end of your hook so you have an even stitch, yarn over and go through both. Go into that next one, bring it through, yarn over and go through both. Here's where you want to pull out your hook or just put it aside. I'm pulling it out for the sake of the video so you can see. That is the third stitch I did. That was the second, that's the first. I'm going to put a stitch marker in there. So now we've got stitch markers on both sides so that no matter which direction we're going to be able to know when the last stitch is that we're into. So you will be able to see it quite really clearly, and we won't make any mistakes as to how many stitches we have in our rows. Okay, so let's keep going. We're going to insert our hook under those two bars, under that V. We're going to yarn over, drop a loop, yarn over, and go through both. This is your single crochet stitch. So keep doing that all the way down the row. Okay, now this finger between my baby finger and this fourth finger is where I produce my tension. So if I want a tighter tension, it all comes from that finger and how much I squeeze these two together, and that's how I set my tension. And for me, it's an even tension. I don't want it tight. I don't want it loose. I just want to try to keep it the same even tension. Oops, sorry, that was a double crochet. The same even tension right through my whole project. So be aware of how much you're squeezing your finger there and make sure that that's the tension you hold throughout your project. And if you find your stitches are too tight, you know you've got too tight of a tension. If you find they're really loose, then you want to tighten it up a little bit. So it takes a little bit of work to try to find what the perfect tension for you is. But in time, as you crochet, you will get it, and you'll have a feel for it, okay? So we're going to continue on down this row until we get to our stitch marker, and it's coming up. I'm going to go into this one, finish my single crochet. Then I can either go into this stitch with my stitch marker already in it, so I'm assured of the stitch that I'm going into, and then remove it, or I can remove it and then complete that stitch. Okay, so now we know for sure that that was the end stitch because we had it marked, and then we know we're going to have the right row count. So when we are switching rows and going to the next row, again we have to chain one, so we keep that side the same height as the rest of the project, and then we're going to turn the work like we're turning the page of a book, and now we're going to work the next row. Okay, we're going to work four rows together here, and now we've done our chain one, turned our work. We're going to go into that space and we're going to single crochet. Okay, go into the next space and single crochet, go into the next and single crochet. Okay, now you can pull out your hook, you can look down your row there, grab your stitch marker. I did 4 this time, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to put my stitch marker in there, so when I get back going that direction, I'm assured that I'm going to be doing my last stitch in the right stitch, and my row counts are going to stay the same. Okay, so into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, make sure that they both go over to the end of the hook, yarn over and go through both into that next stitch. And the more rows you have, of course, the more fabric there is to hold on to with your third finger and your thumb, and then your other fingers begin to hold on to the bottom side of that too, and you get more stability in your project, and ultimately then you know you'll find it easier to do. The foundation chain in the first couple of rows are the hardest because you don't have a big space to hold on to. So don't give up. Some people who are learning to crochet find the first part of it difficult and they end up getting frustrated and giving up. Okay, so here's another reason why my stitch marker is great, because this one here was a little bit, it's not tight, but it was a little bit tighter. And if I didn't have a stitch marker in there, I might have made the mistake and picked up this loop, these two here, when I don't want those two. This one was folded back a little bit. I want these two. All right, so then all you have to do is pull up on your stitch marker. You can see where that little space is. You go into that space, you take out your stitch marker, and you finish your project. You finish your stitch, okay? Just like you normally would. Then you chain one, and you turn your work, okay? We've got 3 rows completed. So let's go ahead and do one more row together. Into that stitch, into the next stitch, into the next stitch. Take your stitch marker, mark your first stitch, continue on down that row. Making sure every time you go under a stitch, you're picking up those 2 bars. See, it's a V. And there's 2 sections to that. If you just go under one like this, you're not doing it right if you're doing just a straight single crochet. You will learn in time that sometimes you do need to go just through one side of that stitch. And in the project, you know, that's not something I'm going to teach you here right now. You're just beginning. But for when you're doing the basic single crochet stitch and you're just learning to crochet, you got to make sure you're going through both of those bars to complete your stitch. The single crochet gives your work a tight finish. So when you're making animals eventually, or projects that you need to put polyfill in or stuffing, single crochet, or pot holders or such like that, single crochet is the stitch for that, because especially for the stuffed animals, because then you don't see the stuffing through it as much. Okay, I'm going to take this one out. You don't see the stuffing through it. If you were to use a larger stitch, then you would see the stuffing through. So it's a dense stitch, so it's nice for making any project that you want to be sure of not seeing through the stitches. Okay, so if this was our last row, which it will be for us at this point, you're going to cut off your yarn end there. You're going to pull it through. You're going to take your needle. You can take this out now because we're done. For you, I would continue going up. Keep going, do like 15, 20 rows, get the hang of it before you quit. And then when you're done, this is how you end a project. You put your yarn through your hook, and then I go to the back of my project, and then I'm going to move this down to where the stitches are firm there. I'm not going to pull that tight. I'm just going to pull it so it's right even and snug up against that side, and then I'm going to just go underneath a few stitches like that. Pull that nice. Make sure I'm not pulling it tight so that I wreck the shape of my work. Maybe I'm going to go under a couple more. Pull that nice, and then I'm going to go back. When I go back 2 or 3 times, no more than 3 times, or you'll get a lump in there. I generally do 2 or 3, depending on what the project is. If it's a blanket, baby blanket that I'm making, I like to go 3 and just make sure it's secure. And then you snip that off, and you've hidden your ends, and you have a beautiful finish. You do the same with this bottom one where you started, okay? So that is what our single crochet swatch looks like. You keep going, make a few more rows, and do it until you feel comfortable with it, and keep practicing and get that stitch nice and even, okay? And then you can see me in the next tutorial, lesson 2 on learning how to crochet, and we're going to tackle a half double crochet stitch, okay? See you then.